have one mic, the other mic is not working. So he's going to talk loud, but he will have a mic. So if you tell him to talk louder, just pick up the mic and then you can use this, okay?
Absolutely. Can you hear me back there?
For now, okay?
Sort of unsure.
Well, welcome everyone. It's St. Patrick's Day. We might have thrown the awesome people off a little bit, but we got a wonderful artist here today. His name is Peter Weiss. He comes to us from Burlington, Iowa. But that is just one of his many stops over the years. And today he'll tell you about his art and a little bit about himself too. And without saying any more, Peter, here we go.
Well, thank you, Amy. First, before I forget, I'd like to thank Amy for organizing this. My sister-in-law, Michelle, who I think you probably know around here, for giving me the idea to apply. And then my brother, for just being my brother. He's been a wonderful companion for many years, even at a distance. Can you hear me now? You having a hard time? I'll read without notes, but I'll ramble. Okay. So I'm listed as an artist, but
Now turn it on.
Oh, got to turn on.
There you go.
Okay, how's this?
Put it up to your mouth.
Have to put it up to
A little closer.
A little closer? How's that, ma'am?
Closer.
No difference.
no, no,
Hello?
no difference. No difference.
No different?
Yeah.
You have to
Low
really-
battery.
I love it. Mine gets low all the time.
Little better.
Low battery, right.
Hold on a
I think it
sec.
doesn't work then.
Let's
Yeah.
try this. Talk real loud.
There we go. Are you okay with that, ma'am, or would you like to come up?
She'll be all right.
I'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're kind of shy. I don't know what you're doing with your, okay. So, St. Patrick's Day. Glad you came aboard, I guess, for that. And my name is Peter. I was born in my birth stuff is on the. There's a written sort of statement there where I come from. So I'm going to stick to the exhibit's called Montage. So are you familiar as a group with the idea of montage or collage or things like that? A couple people shaking their heads. And I want you to ask questions, please. You don't.
Just explain it.
Yeah. So most of my work, I do have paintings next door, but most of the stuff, this is called montage. So obviously that's the main thrust of the show. And montage actually in French means engineering. And if you try to think of my work or any other work, it was a relatively new invention in arts at the turn of the century, just before World War I would say. And it was concurrently started, it was just collage, cutting up different pieces of images and then creating new meanings by joining these images together, okay? So it was a departure from painting in itself. Let me let this gentleman sit here.
Sorry.
No problem.
Step up a little bit, Jim. Peter,
But
come up a little bit.
okay.
There.
So montage was a term taken over from engineering, French engineering, mostly railroad stuff. They would assemble, any kind of, the idea is to assemble separate pieces into something, right? So the sum actually is greater than its parts. And that works with images as well. You can multiply the meaning or completely change the meaning of an image by joining it with another image in a juxtaposition to create a new meaning. And that was sort of the idea that Picasso and Braque were doing the same thing in painting, but there were limitations there. So this was also the age of photography coming out, popular photography, newspapers, any kind of printed material, mass printed material, right? So you could take something mundane if you're an artist and and paste it next to, say, a dog next to a jungle, or you wouldn't normally think of that, right? You'd have a sort of odd, say, what's this guy talking about? You add a third one, you add a fourth one, and pretty soon you've got a completely different work of art. And I don't call myself an artist. I don't even know if I would call photo montage as artists. There are artists that do photo montage, but they also do painting, they do sculpture and all that sort of thing, which I do, but I'm interested in photo montage. Now my photo montage, my sources, when I first started out, I would do cut and paste sort of things. So, you know, envision a picture plane like that, and then cutting up. You'd have to assemble a huge library of images because a lot of it is very spontaneous. You say, oh, I like that one, let's see how it looks next to the other one. It's not really about generating meaning or even a specific subject like painting would be, right? Rembrandt painted Rembrandt. He didn't paint Rembrandt and his brothers or sisters or a landscape or anything like that. People could read that painting this is just about Rembrandt himself or his wife, for instance, as a single subject. But as World War I developed, the world fractured, right? People couldn't believe the terrible confusion and berserkness of World War I in combat and people being ripped apart, you know, as soldiers or sailors or anything like that. And photo montage sort of developed out of that because a lot of the people that did photo montage after the war had been soldiers in the German army. So it's primarily the technique was developed probably in Berlin, you would say, during what they call the Dada movement. Has anybody ever heard of the Dada movement?
Yes.
Okay, so the Dada movement was a reaction against war, basically. And anything that had to do with the war, which was like traditional 19th century painting, you know, where everything was beautiful. The Cathedral of Monet would be there forever, you know, or any kind of bucolic sort of landscape. Well, the people that developed photo montage generally were Dadaists, and they were pacifists, and they said, this is not the world we signed up for, right? And this was their reaction to the carnage of World War I. And the whole idea of collage developed out of that because you could take disparate elements. They weren't pleasant elements, but they could build up their sensational horror towards the war, maybe not necessarily to change the war, but a lot of it was self-therapy. There's a painter called Otto Dix, who wasn't particularly a photo montagist, but his paintings look very much like montages because there's you know, soldiers in trenches and the aftermath of bombings and that sort of thing. So specifically, it started as an anti-war kind of practice of art, I would say. And then it spread, and it still was cut and paste, right? People would just take scissors, glue, and a couple images and apply them to a piece of paper. And it developed during Dadaism and it split into certain movements, you would say. You see in artistic movements, there's a million of them. You can't even count how many artist movements there are. But there were centers in Zurich, Switzerland, in Berlin, in Paris later, and it developed into surrealism, which is a whole different form. I won't bore you with my ideas about that, but I'm not a big fan of surrealism. And any questions yet? Nothing? Oh, yeah.
In your bio, you say that you were influenced to go into art because you had many of your uncles and so forth
Yes.
served during World War II. What was the influence there that?
Oh, just my uncle, for instance, was a bomber pilot in over Italy, right? And he saw carnage from a different position, but it was still carnage, right? And he got me interested in the history of World War II because as a kid, I didn't, I was, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. And it developed a curiosity in what they were talking about because a lot of veterans would talk endlessly about World War II and then some wouldn't. Well, I was lucky enough to have an uncle that did. And so I would just I'd look in a magazine and say, oh, here's a picture of an American soldier, here's one of a German soldier. I think that's what kids do. It used to be cowboys and Indians. But I lived in Albuquerque, which was, had 2 Air Force bases, right? And was heavily energized by government funding, and of course there are lots of Air Force people there. So that's how I got interested. It was purely what we call mimetic art, right? It was I try to see a photograph and then draw it. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. Instead of cowboys and Indians, right? Which we have plenty of in New Mexico anyway, or at least the myth about them. So yeah, that's where I got interested in art. So where was I? Dadaism developed into political messaging in the Bolshevik Revolution. And there was a school of Dadaism that became constructivism. And there, you can see posters now, I think for Absolute Vodka, stuff like that, they use a collage effect, I'm not sure. But it would be you'd be able to read a message, not sequentially, but all at the same time your eye would see that. And they were very effective. It was suppressed by Stalin later. It was only a span of 3 or 4 years. But you've probably seen the following types of art in advertising, because it was heavily influenced by it creates a sense of progression and modernism, right, at that time. So that when I got interested in it, it was certainly long after. Let's see, I started painting first. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh.
We're just playing with our faces here.
Oh, okay. So let's see, where was I? I don't want to make this about me.
You started with painting.
Huh?
You started with painting.
I started with painting. I was in the Army. I got pretty badly injured, so I had like 6 months, that I couldn't walk or very well. So I started painting, which is something I always wanted to do. And I started painting very simple, mostly people, but people like, that influenced me, like authors. I have a very literary sense to even my photo montage now. I draw subjects that are literarily based and influenced by, and that's why I don't call it art, really. I mean, my degree is in English, but I'm interested in the intersection between the literature and the visual arts, which is, that's one thing you do in graphics a lot, because you have text to advertise an image, right, that represents something else. So when I got back on my feet, I got interested in more unconventional forms of representation, of visual representation. So I call myself an image maker rather than an artist, even though the biography says differently, which is my fault. I wanted, yes.
There's a museum here in Valporaiso.
Yeah, I went to.
Did you check it out?
I did, and all I saw was a closed door because of spring break.
Well, right now they have an exhibit that is meshes photography
Mm-hmm.
and poetry.
Yeah.
You might, they may be open today.
They're not. I checked it. It's just spring break, Nobody was on the campus.
No, we're not talking about the campus gallery. Mr. Brower here is a retired professor.
Oh, Mr. Brower.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
No, I'm talking about the Porter County Museum.
Oh.
It's right across the street from the courthouse, and they've got they have a variety of exhibits.
Right.
One of which is right now is they have a small gallery, and right now they're exhibiting photographs of a major fire that took place in Valporaiso back in the early 1900s.
Okay.
But also there's another gallery that is where they exhibit artwork and poetry.
And it'll be open on a Sunday?
I think they may be.
Really? I might give it a shot.
It
We're
could
going
be.
downtown later.
I get the publicity, I'm a member there, and there's some beautiful photographs that are evocative of other ideas, and there are poems associated with the
Right.
photos. And they work together.
Yeah,
Like a
synergistic.
collage in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Of ideas and of images. And there's a certain kind of whimsy about a lot of the photos. But I haven't seen the show yet, I've just seen that publicity.
You're from Valpo, are you?
Yes,
Okay, it's right across from the courthouse.
yes, I know,
and
I saw it the other day, I saw the outside, yeah, of the museum.
I know, anyways, I didn't even, for whatever reason, I didn't even think about it, tell you the truth. Pete's been here for a
Before he
couple of
goes
days
back
and
to Iowa, probably ought to try to get him over there.
yeah, we'll go give it a shot.
All right, continue.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we were talking about the intersection of different forms of expression, and so I got interested in that, and any kind of manufactured multimedia kind of, or multiplicative like a print, for instance, you know. I started reading about Walter Benjamin. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was a German philosopher in just before World War II, very famous, talking about how the image prior to mass manufacture and printing, and even Gutenberg, you could say, but probably a little beyond that, that art in general was the property of rich people, right? And when the presses started working in the 1500s, and then mass production of art in like prints and books and things like that, the aura disappeared, and things like collage and photomontage became more of a labor working class sort of idea because it appealed to the entire population. So art was snatched from up here and then distributed widely in culture, and that's why photomontage or any kind of montage worked so became so popular, along with this ideological stance of being anti-war, basically. So that was interesting, and I got reading him, and he wrote a book called The Age of Art in the Mechanical Age, or something like that, about how art had become democratized. And if you practice it, what you're doing is actually practicing democracy. You're maybe unintentionally, but you're spreading things even on a two-dimensional platform, rather than have a king in a frame above in your castle, right? So this was a wonderful part of montage. It became a people's art, and I hope it still is. So a very strong influence by him. And then of course World War II came, and the same conditions prevailed, except there was a nuclear war with it. So there was almost a sense that the arts had disappeared because of Auschwitz, for instance. There was a German philosopher said, how can you have poetry after Auschwitz, right? So it's a lot of art became very nihilistic, and I don't know, people probably wouldn't even call it art, you know, but that's what it is, you know, that's where we're at. So I started doing paper collage, and then I swore I'd never do cyber or computer generated work, but I did, because my hand coordination disappeared and my eyesight started to decline. So I said, this is an ideal way to do things. And you're almost like your own little god in a cockpit, you know, creating these images which you can pull off the net. Hundreds of thousands or millions of images. They're endless. And if you see something that's appropriate to your mood, I don't really try to say anything with my stuff, but I'll take things, oh, these might look interesting together, and then in retrospect I go back 2 or 3 weeks later and say, oh, that's what I was trying to do. They're almost like psychotherapy, right? You snatch these things, these ideas, you try to simulate memories. I use a lot of historical subjects and mix them around. So what I'd like to do is just talk about this, because it's a little clearer than me yammering on about this. So this is called Freudian ships, okay? So it's a joke to begin with, right? Everybody knows what a Freudian slip is, right? But if you have a Freudian ship, that's a whole different matter, and that's part of Dadaism, is making a joke, or any of its subsequent movements, right? So you had this Zeppelin, or 2 Zeppelins, they're the Freudian ships for obvious reasons, you know, it's a sexual pun. And then I was thinking very much about a movie that was highly influential on me when I was in the 60s, and that was Blow Up. Has anybody ever seen that movie?
What is it again?
Blow Up? Yeah. So it's a I mean, it was a very formative movie. It was about a photographer, right? So you can relate to that if you're into art. A photographer in London who visits a park for some reason, and he sees a couple, and they disappear, and then finally they're almost over the horizon, and it looks like they're making love or something like that, and then he realizes that the woman is murdering the man she's with. She disappears behind a tree line. So it's a movie all about what's real and what isn't. And the rest of the movie is him trying to unravel this idea, which is sort of what artists do, you know. They create illusion out of reality. And so the entire movie is his struggle to know what reality is, right? So I use the idea of I do a lot of pictures of interiors of factories, especially when they're no longer usable, but they're still recognizable with factories. So I'm joining the eye of Andy Warhol. Believe me, it's a reference to Andy Warhol's factory, where they produced all sorts of pop art, and setting the movie inside there, and then trying to discover the differences between the film and the static image which I'm creating. So this is Vanessa Redgrave, who is the star of Blow Up. She was actually the murderess, or was she? So there's this air of mystery I try to recreate, because in the movie you really never know. It ends up, it's just this angst of this person trying to discover what reality is. So, and then this represents a couple, and this is a reference to the Italian painter De Chirico, Giorgio De Chirico, who had these very mysterious paintings of piazzas and places like that, but sort of out of kilter. You say, well, that couldn't be a real place because the proportions are wrong, right? And he didn't become a Dadaist or anything. In fact, he's very much not. But I like her because she's sort of running through art history, you might say, and saying that all these things are tied together eventually. But you just don't know how, and you never will find out, right? So I like the enigmatic thing. And then, of course, these two questionable English characters who are dandies, right? They're speculating on God knows what in that movie, but I kind of look at them as art critics, you know? And when you have art critics, you always have trouble with artists because they resent what they say, and but they're necessary. They're necessary like spiders, you know. They keep the controversy up in the arts, I think. And the cat sort of just wandering around, checking everything out, and probably is going onto a set of an entirely different kind of art. So. I think this was probably one of my best pictures. I don't know if people get it. I'm not too sure I want them to get it, really, to tell you the truth. And that's not intentional, that's not messing with them. It's just, well, you know, you make up a little narrative of your own. And I don't generally like to explain my work, but I thought this was good because it was big enough. So if any of you have a chance to see Blow Up, and have 2.5 hours, very long movie, you might see how this correlates with that. So that's about what I've got here. There's a New York art dealer named Sidney Janis that said art is too complex to discuss, but I figure I need 20 minutes to discover that in my talk. I could go on.
You said you started painting, was that during the period you were convalescing from
Yes.
your injury in the military?
Yes, yeah.
What happened in the military that gave you the injury?
Oh, I was rappelling from a helicopter
Oh,
and ran out of rope, basically. So I landed on concrete like 30 feet
oh,
below. So I was
lucky
very
to
lucky
survive.
to survive. But, and it's a silver lining because, you know, when you're recuperating from something, it gives you pause to do what you wanna do with your life, which is, you know, you've just recovered by the grace of God, basically, you know. So, it's a humbling experience and it was you turn it into an opportunity, right? Yeah, so.
I like to come early to take in the artwork, before I hear the lecture.
Oh, did you? You snuck in, huh?
Yeah. In any case, looking at it in totality, my impression was you clearly noting the ugliness of war. People
Yes.
walking around with machine guns in the context of civilians and so forth, and of course, that goes on in modern warfare.
Yeah, look at today.
Look at
exactly.
Gaza.
Right, Gaza. Disgusting like Auschwitz disgusting to me. I mean, it's even worse than war. It's slaughter. But also a lot of that's personal experiences from when I was in the 60s. I was involved in a lot of radicalism and stuff like that. So if you look at some of those pictures, they're reference to the demonstrations and anti-war stuff, which I just kept, you know, even going through the Army. I was a medic, so I didn't feel like I was doing anything against my own morality by doing that. But it was certainly after Vietnam, but before that, certainly the disruption and the chaos of the 60s is a rich field for me to mine. And also the idea of how memories change. You know, I'm sort of reconsidering my life now, and I'm on the other end of it, right? And so you try to make sense of your life, and through images, you know, it's a very good way because it trips other ideas and other things like that. So a lot of those are very autobiographical at the same time.
But even the picture of this industrial scene, because
Yeah.
in modern warfare, industry is a part of the war machine.
Absolutely.
How do you gotta build the tanks and the artillery and so forth.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I wasn't thinking that with this picture, but, you know, it's more the factory, the sense of creating multiple reproductive images like Warhol did. I mean, Warhol was a great teacher. Everybody thought his work was banal, right? But it wasn't banal. It was teaching us that everything is subject to profit and everything is subject to multiplication. And that leads to the idea of the ideas of Jean Baudrillard, who was a French philosopher in the 70s, that stated the images, like particularly in marketing, become more important than the things that they portray, right? So it's an inversion of what we've been led to believe about psychology and sociology, that we've created a hyper reality. Which is sort of, I would say, an evil version of a dream, in which in dreams you think, oh, I saw my mom in my dreams last night, but you didn't see your mom. You saw somebody that represents something else, and it happened to fall into being your mom or your brother or anything. Well, the bad part of that is advertising, right? And this completely overpressure of images, and pretty soon you don't think of a Coke, you're thinking of the picture of the Coke, right? And that's how they sell this stuff, right? It seems painfully obvious, but most people don't, because it's relentless, right? So it has become a hyper reality where you are just a victim of market forces. So, and that, I think that ties in hand with some of the military stuff too. I don't know where yet, but and I also think physics influences me. The idea of quantum physics, of which my brother knows a lot and which I know nothing, but it sounds cool, so I read things about quantum physics. And the indeterminacy, in Newtonian physics, for instance, you've got a real world, you've got matter, it operates by laws, but you drill down into a subatomic level, you have things that can be two places at once, like particles and that sort of thing, and that's heavily influences my work. The idea that everything is ambiguous, and that works with law too, because the image was nothing but ambiguity, and to photography, he's particularly sensitive to that, right? And it helped him mature and realize that, you know, nothing is as it seems, right? But then I got into the political side of it, and you can't ignore the reality like Gaza. So, you know, what is more important in terms of priority? You know, being aware of Gaza, for instance, or just painting a picture that's beautiful. And to me, I've always stepped on the idea that art should penetrate social and political things, or it's not art at all. It's not complete like that. You know, it's like the great painters like Goya. I mean, he did that, right? And I'm not saying I'm anywhere close to Goya, but he's an inspiration where you need to have art intrude into real life and make your statement. It's not effective. You know, you paint an anti-war picture anytime today or in Vietnam, there's only one or two that stuck with people that actually turned the tide of the war. And the one was after My Lai, the trench of dead babies and mothers, and it says "and babies" with a question mark, and then it goes "and babies," you know. So I think that actually was very influential, but all the other crap that came out about anti-war, it was just, like we say, pissing in the wind, you know. It was, it helped make things cathartic for yourself. You're so angry about the war and the lies and all that kind of stuff. So you can't step too far into the ideological camp without losing your artistic ambitions. But you know, you have to tread it. It's like reality and illusion. You have to find a fine line to walk as you create things. And that, again, that's why I don't call myself an artist. You know, but I'm not a provocateur anymore either. So
You talked about the democratization of art. This area is best known as an industrial area, heavy
Yeah.
industrial area, but it is a very active art, community-based approach. This program here, Lubeznik over in Michigan City,
oh, okay.
the art barn in rural Valporaiso, Chesterton Art Center. You have the Art House in Highland. You have the South Shore Art in Munster. It's got one of the biggest gallery spaces in the Chicago area.
I didn't know that, but of course I know Chicago is a prime
Right.
place, you know, and the Chicago Museum of Art is a wonderful place, right? Although I have my reservations about getting fine art and leaving it in the basement, you know, which is what a lot of art museums do. I almost like your idea that it's something which is constantly changing, but the art they have is the art they show, and they don't hide stuff in the basement, you know, because they want to increase their financial status or anything like that. But that's a minor thing, really, I guess. My 30 years of my life were spent in Massachusetts, so I was surrounded with that all the time, and there's lots of arts organizations and things like that. But I came back to Iowa because I want quiet. I didn't want to be around people who were talking about art all the time and forming groups. I formed an anti-censorship group, but you know, you get so wrapped up in the dynamics of it and how it's going to work. It's like selling work. You know, if you get involved with that, you're losing time doing art. So that's I would like to probably see all that stuff, but I have to go back, unfortunately, to my own little creative cave there. And I run a gallery too, so I think the whole idea of art movements is, I've thought them over, and they're great art movements from A to B. You know, there's like the Dadaists, and then there's the Surrealists, and then as you go further in time, it atomizes, right? So you get to New York by 1960 or 70, and you've got, 100 avant-garde art groups, and they're all shouting at each other and trying to promote their own ideologies or trying to even agree on one. Yes?
I want to ask if there are other people that have questions, because I think there are some other folks that have questions too.
Oh, anybody else? Sorry.
Well, I was gonna ask about what, you do oils, do you ever do watercolor or other kinds of?
I have, it's sort of, just to say I've done them basically. I'm not, watercolor is like the hardest visual arts medium that I can think of. It's very difficult, and I'm not too sure that I would ever be good at. And when I did do them, the landscapes were terrible. I did a couple pictures of people, portraits of people, which were okay. But you know what? That's not my sentiment, really. It's very delicate, and it's a reverse to oil painting. It's additive rather than subtractive, or the other way around. Right. And I hate acrylics because they dry too fast. They don't look like oils. Yes. Hi, Richard.
I came in late and I apologize.
No.
Did you have I need to know just sometimes just plain facts. Do you have a title for that work?
This work?
Yes.
Yeah, it's called Freudian Ships.
Ah. You have titles for all your work?
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I try not to, you know, I gotta give a person a chance to think, well, what is this person thinking of? And the title does that, right? But that doesn't always work with my stuff.
Well, you know, would it be helpful to me for you to tell us a little more what brought you to make that title? What about that work? I know you said some things.
It was a joke, yeah. It's a pun.
Oh, it's a joke.
It's a pun, yeah, yeah. Which is common among contemporary work. If you've read Freud, you know, all his explanations are sexually based, right? So I was sort of making fun of Freud because people don't take it that seriously anymore.
Well, that's probably true. How did you do that? You know, I think you say you don't cut and paste anymore.
No.
All right, now tell us how you did that.
Oh, okay. So I only use a very basic graphics editor, like I call it Adobe, well, they call it Adobe Photoshop.
Is that a software, graphics editor?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. It's a learning curve, which is sort of hard, but if you think of it, this is just a poor representation of what I would do as a brain. Like if I were cutting and pasting it, it performs the same sort of activities
Right.
that your brain does, right?
How
And-
does that work? A little bit more detail. How you use the software, and where did you cut and paste in that? Or
Well, the cut and paste would be in, formally it would be in any element of it. For instance, the couple here,
yes, where did you get that?
I got it off, like Google Images maybe, I don't know. You have storage places where people, film stills, for instance. I think that was a film still.
Or you can just take part of it?
Yeah,
How
Yeah.
do you do that?
same the way you would with a piece of paper. You get an X-Acto knife or a scissors, and you cut it out, and then you finely cut it, and then you apply some kind of adhesive, and you put it on the ground, which
But is that cut and paste then?
no, it's not. I took it off the net, processed it in the Photoshop Elements program, the Adobe, and then manipulate it to make it large or small. It's just wonderful what it can do.
Just give us a little idea of how you take it off the net.
Oh, okay. Easily. I'd say almost entirely images are not copyright protected, right?
Uh-huh.
So what you do, you find the image and
then what?
then you download it to your computer,
Yes.
right? And then you insert it into this program because you've already started a working space, and then you move it over from where you've downloaded it in Adobe over to your working space, and you create a layer. It's just like what you do as a working
How do
artist.
you get the contours of that figure there and not the background? I assume that the background is what you added.
Yeah, but the background started first.
The background started first, and
Right.
you saw that figure. How did you get the contours of that figure?
Well, there's a tool to do it. It's called a cutting tool. And you manipulate your mouse. Yeah, you manipulate your mouse with the cursor. You take that tool out of the menu. It's called a menu, and then it forms a dotted line around it. And there's, yeah. So and then when you're ready, you say, okay, it's ready, and then
and download.
no, you've already downloaded it.
Move it.
Move it.
So you have two separate things on your screen. You have the background, I think it's the same as matting would you say in filmmaking, you know, when they do a green screen behind it, what you're doing is you're applying, you're putting the people in front of it and making sense of them. And then you say, okay, I'm done, and then you flatten the image so that it's done for good, right? But you can spend a lot of time just
Contouring it out.
contouring it, yeah, that would be the word, yeah. Yeah, so you do that, you know, incrementally all the time, and
Was the original, the view, something you took from the net?
yeah,
The overall?
yes.
Something you took from the net and then these little parts in it?
Yes.
You added?
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What about the color? Was this all in color or is it in the tones of?
Whatever you want to choose. They have filters for color. For instance, if you want to just do a black and white picture, you can do that. Or you can intensify colors. If I wanted to take this and intensify, I have a control to intensify.
So
It's just like your brain.
So what you did is you found the overall view.
Right.
You like that?
I like that. Because it's, you know, it's a working space and it's got, you know,
How did you get it so big?
I didn't get it so big. I have to send a smaller, I can't work better than, bigger than 8 by 10 unless I want to stitch them together. So I usually make an 8 by 10 and then I in high resolution. And then I send it off to the people that print these. And as if by magic, they can expand them to quite large.
Oh,
As big as a human being, really.
Now the surface is a clear plastic?
No, it's actually aluminum that has paint injected into it at high pressure.
Oh, so it's a pigment print kind of.
It is, yeah, or an analog of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's indestructible, really. I mean, not totally, but as much as I've ever seen anything being indestructible as art, that's it.
See, when I use a computer, I want to scan something,
Yes,
then I can use the mouse and it makes a rectangle, not a.
yes.
Now, how do you get it to make the figure size?
Well, they have, geez, I wish I could show you. I didn't really prepare it. I didn't think people would be that interested in it, but their algorithms in the program itself is highly complicated, and it takes a long time to learn, even a very basic one. But once you're over the hump, it's just like, you know, you're slicing bread, basically. Very easy. They have a menu of things you can do. You can lighten, darken, up contrast, do your lines around various forms of that thing.
Well, you're making me respect it more. It takes a
I'm
lot
glad.
of skill to do this.
Well, yeah, but it takes a skill I still have in my hand and wrist, rather than in my fingers to cut or whatever. So it's a very good substitute for it, right? And there's a lot of ways that you can, you know.
So usually you go about an 8 by 10 sheet of paper kind of
Yeah,
size,
yeah.
and then you send that.
I send an image of it, right?
You send an image of it to some other company that makes it and reproduces it large.
Yes. I use a company called Artbeat, but there's a lot of aluminum printing now. Corporations love to use them because they can make gigantic things, you know.
You don't have to frame it.
Don't have to frame it? No, it's, you know, it's
How
better
do
than
you
sliced
hang it
bread.
on the wall?
Huh?
How do you hang it on a wall?
I'll show you. There's various hangers. I use a sawtooth.
Oh yeah,
See, that's welded to the back,
oh yeah.
which is Amy's nightmare, but we worked it out anyway. In theory, I could take this, drill on either side, and then stretch a wire between them.
Uh-huh.
You know, that would be easier. But yeah, I mean, they're not hugely expensive,
It's
but
lightweight, I take it?
yeah, here. For metal, wouldn't you say?
Wow, pretty light.
Pretty light. Aluminum, wonderful. Magic, we're gonna hang this anyway, so.
It's a bunch of old Coke cans.
Sir, you had somebody? George? Did you have a question?
Not a question so much as a statement. It seems from your conversation, basically, all of the techniques that were used in the past have been digitized.
Well, that's the unfortunate truth if you're a pessimist, yeah, pretty
Well,
much.
I don't say it as a pessimist, but that's, I understand.
Or on the way to be, sure, yeah, the whole virtual idea.
That doesn't make it easier, you still have to have something in your mind artistically, but the way you present it is not from the old technique, but from this new technique.
Absolutely, yeah, that's, the long and the short of it. I'm sure there's different permutations, right, on how people adapt to technology, but, that's pretty much it. It's, artificial intelligence, basically, that is a form of artificial intelligence, just a very small fraction of it. But, and I won't use artificial intelligence in art, unless it's something that can be controlled by me. If I input something into a software or into a program that says, draw a picture of a woman with red hair on an island in Tahiti, what AI does, it generates that image all the way. I mean, it's a complete entirety. You really have nothing to do with it except a voice command, and you don't really know how it's going to
Well,
come
that's
out.
supposed to be the culmination of its memory.
Yes, and it's unsatisfactory to me. I think most
That's,
people are frightened by that. I am.
It's kind of homogenized, that's,
Yeah, well, yeah, depending on how big this database
yeah,
is.
who's the artist?
Right, exactly, yeah. Sir, Richard.
How many copies do you make of this? You can make copies on infinite, on unnumbered copies. You can.
Yeah, what I do with my smaller stuff that I don't send away, I always put like 1 of 5 or something like that. So I don't generally make more than 3 copies of any print. This I probably will never make another copy of it, unless somebody bought it and then I want to replace it because I like it. But yeah, it's the same. It's the same protocol that you use with prints. So you
can have an edition of 10.
you could, yeah, if you
But
can
then
afford
you
it.
destroy the original and then you just have the.
Right, and people,
reproduction.
yeah, I mean, goes back to the whole question of reproducibility and how it democratizes the image. Well, in democratizing it, it's also decreasing its monetary value according to some people that care about that sort of thing, right? So, 100,000 of these, after the first one, like a car, they depreciate.
Do you mind telling us how much it costs to make it that size?
Probably just $200, I'd say. Yeah. Does that seem high to you?
Well,
Yeah.
Does it?
that makes you,
Uh-oh.
you multiply that by 2 for the cost to the customer.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's just capitalism at work. I mean, so, they're not gonna give it away. So, but I like the idea that it's gonna last forever, basically. So, who's losing out on that? It's just how you look at it, the parameters of it. Does it have aesthetic value? Well, the aesthetic value should be constant as long as the picture exists, right? If you hate it, you're gonna hate it in the 10th edition or the 20th edition. But I feel about art, and I don't know a lot of people, if you're in New York where these are commercial bases, right, where they're centers of pushing art for money, right? A lot of people, it's not necessarily about making money, or people are very unusual, uncomfortable with talking about art in America in particular. They don't know, generally, when they approach it, they say, what am I looking at, right? So if you assign it a monetary value, oh, okay, this is worth 200, so it must be better than one that's at 100, right? But of course, that's their own, that's how they get comfortable with it. And I don't like being judgmental about it, but that's not what I would do. So, it costs money to make money, that's for sure. Anyway.
Well, you guys are enjoying this very much, but there's
We got,
questions.
I've been rambling, sorry folks.
No, I'm not, I don't want to stop it, if there's more questions, I continue, but.
Oh, okay.
Yourself, please.
My brother had a coaching comment.
Well, you'll find the metallized prints varying in price anywhere from, maybe your first print will be $200, but depending on place, your first print can be anywhere from maybe that print would be like $75 to $200 depending on where you went. and you pay for the quality.
Yes, yes, yeah.
But very frequently, I subscribe to about 4 different printmaking companies' emails, because I do some large prints. I have one of his paintings I have printed and stuck up on my wall, and I think it's 20 by 26 roughly.
Yeah, 22 by 26.
22 by 26, and I printed that 2 years ago, and it was I think it was $112 maybe 3 years ago, 3 years ago, and now that same print is $22 most of the time. These people have really commercialized this business, so
Yeah.
you could buy one of those and get the second one essentially free. There's a lot of 2 for 1. There's a very wide range of services available, and there is a wide range of quality too.
Yeah.
I've only printed 3 or 4 things.
Why doesn't that pixelate when you enlarge it that much?
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, yeah.
Yeah,
Raise it, yeah.
yeah. Scary, I know.
So it just saturates the color so it doesn't pixelate, or that's,
Well,
Effectively, what it-
I can produce at a very low resolution, and even a place like I use couldn't fix that. I mean, but I use a resolution of 300. They say 150 is sufficient, but I don't believe it. But 300. But if you're doing something at 72 dpi, that'll pixelate after 8 by 10, maybe, or 11 by 14. And you might want it, but you probably won't, I think.
Literally what they do is they mathematically shape the pixels until they get a blurred line that an algorithm likes.
Right. Thank you for that. I don't know about
Yeah,
that. But,
you know, everything's a little square, so they shape the little square.
But it also, you have to. I think if you think about images or art, you have to consider your own opinion, and it's sort of a revelatory thing if you think about an AI image opposed to a Rembrandt. I mean, do they have equal value? Are they both original? Well, these are the questions you got to ask yourself, but just not assigning a monetary value to. You're shaking your head.
Oh, no, it's just a twitch.
He's twitching. He's about ready
Trying to
die.
straighten out the neck, that's all.
Any more questions? I mean, I could go on.
I don't have a question, but I find what you have on the screen extremely interesting.
That screen? Oh, yes, you will see it live. Woof. Yeah, I'm a dog lover.
Call it wolf.
I call it dogs, but
Dogs.
it could be wolves. Yeah.
You could,
Oh,
I mean, the more I look at it, the more I see.
tell them about how you put that one together.
pretty much the same. I mean, it's pretty much the same procedure. That was easy, really, compared to that.
And the hidden statement, or not hidden, why dogs
Why
has.
dogs?
Yes.
Because I think the closest, you might say apes are closer or gorillas are closer to humans. To me, they're not. It's dogs. It's just
In terms of intelligence, I would agree.
What?
In terms of intelligence, in response from the animal kingdom, I think the dogs reflect that.
Do you really? You think they're superior to gorillas and apes and things like that? I don't.
Well, no, the literature doesn't, because the gorillas and apes use tools and there's a thinking mechanism.
Yeah, they
and a
have
level that the
opposable
dogs
thumb.
don't express.
Yeah, that's true. So on an intelligence level, I think apes win. But for heart and dog and loyalty and all these sort of things that you can't see, they're great. So to me, they're superior to humans at certain times, especially these times in a lot of ways. Of course, it's a fantasy, but you can always, a girl can dream, right?
Well, if you think about loyalty, there's enough stories in the animal kingdom.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially about dogs that reflect that.
Yeah, they're not about, I remember my ape man, came to my grave every day after I died, right? But dogs will do that, right? So, they're just a supreme version of what's best in human beings. They rise to that, I think. We apply a lot of ideas that they have the same emotions, but it's all a mystery. A dog can't talk, so it's sort of, it makes me wonder every time I look in a dog's eyes what they're thinking about. And I prefer to think it's, I don't wanna eat you after you're dead. It's like, you know. It's a more benevolent sort of thing, right? So that's why I did that, because I love dogs. They're sophisticated dogs, they're literary dogs.
They certainly are. Yes, they are.
And that was shot, I think outside Washington Park a long time ago in the 1940s. So, you know, I feel comfortable in an urban environment. And, yeah, so thank you, it's one of my favorite ones. So, anybody else wanna jump in?
Or you can go inside the gallery and view the stuff
Yeah.
and he'll walk around if you got questions about specific ones.
Yeah, here I am. I see
Ask
I'm
him
about
now.
a half hour over.
Got more
What?
pictures around?
Not well.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah.
should-
Yeah,
we
I
took
wanna
a
see
picture.
those.
Yeah, yeah. 229.
Give me a minute.
So I went over what?
30 minutes.
Yeah. That's good for me, actually. Well, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to be able to talk. And thank you, Rich.
But
Yeah, get some chat.